What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to take a look at the basics of Nuxt.js. We'll be learning by making an app, so we'll build out a video game site using the IGDB API. We'll learn about the basic features of Nuxt in the process. So what exactly is Nuxt? Nuxt is a framework on top of Vue.js. So why would we want another framework on top of Vue? Well, the main reason is for server-side rendering. If you're using just a normal Vue app, everything is rendered in the client. The disadvantage is that your SEO will take a hit. With Nuxt, your application is rendered on the server using Node, and Google can crawl your site like it does traditionally. Nuxt can also serve as a static site generator, but we won't be looking at that feature in this video. Furthermore, Nuxt adds more conveniences and structure to your Vue app, which in my opinion makes larger applications more organized. We'll take a look at some of the features as we go along. So before you start, you should definitely be familiar with the basics of Vue and its surrounding ecosystem like Vuex and the Vue router. So here's the demo app that we'll be building. It's a video game site, like I said, and it's very basic. It just pulls from the API, and these are just the popular games out now. And if you click on them, then it will go to a details page, and it has the different information about this particular video game. So yeah, we'll build this from scratch using Nuxt and this IGDB API and also Tailwind. Okay, so let's jump into the docs and let's get started. So to install it, you can just use this command, which uses npx. So let's just go ahead and do that. npx create Nuxt app. And let's call it Nuxt example. And you're presented with a bunch of options here. So let's just go to this. You can choose a custom server framework, but we're just going to use none. And we're going to use Tailwind for the UI framework because Tailwind is awesome. And for rendering mode, if you want server-side rendering, then you should choose universal. If you just want a standard single-page app, then choose single-page app. We're going to use universal. Yes, we want Axios because we'll be working with the video game API. ESLint. I'm just going to say no for ESLint and prettier. And let's use npm. Okay, so that's done. So let's just cd into it, Nuxt example, and then we can do npm run dev. Okay, so that's done. Let's go ahead and jump into that and see what we get. Okay, so here's the default Nuxt page, and let's open that up in our code editor. I'm just going to open it up in VS Code. And let's take a look at the folder structure we get here. It's quite different from if you're used to using a Vue CLI app, so let's go through it. So this page you see here is the index page. And there's an error here about ESLint failing. That's fine. Let me just close this because we're not using it. I tried using it when I was building this app, and I found that ESLint and prettier just got in my way, and it was formatting things to the point where I didn't like it. I think I need to configure it more to get it to a point where I like it, but I'm just going to turn it off here. Okay, so here is the index page. Let's check if Tailwind works. So let's just see if we can add like a background here. So let's see if we can do BG blue, see if that works. And it does, cool. Okay, now let's go through the folder structure. Okay, before we do that, I just want to show you that this app is server rendered. So if you right click and view page source, this is what comes back from the server. And if you were to do this in a normal Vue CLI app, then you won't see this text because it's rendered on the client. But since this is server rendered, you'll be able to see that text. So if we do view page source, it's going to take a while because it's loading Tailwind, which is a huge file. But if you go down here, you'll be able to see it. So my stunning, there it is. Again, if you were to do this in a Vue CLI app, you would not see this coming back from the server because it is rendered in the client. Cool. Now, if you inspect, this is what you see when everything's rendered, including what JavaScript renders for you. So that's the difference between Vue source and just inspecting the elements. Okay, now let's take a look at the folder structure. Okay, let's start from the top. Assets are where your assets goes. I believe the Tailwind CSS file is in here, so we can add any components in here that we like. Components is similar to a Vue CLI app, and it's where we should put our components. You can see there's one for the logo here, which is just a bunch of divs. If you inspect it, you'll see that this is just a bunch of divs. Cool. Layouts. Layouts allow you to extend different views. You need a default one, and here's the default one here. But you can easily create other ones and extend them as well. So here is where we'll be creating our header. If you, actually I have the design here, so we'll have a header in here, and this is, I mean, there's no footer, but if there were a footer, this is where you'll put it. So we'll be making use of this default layout here. Middleware. So let's take a look at the README. So middleware lets you define custom functions that need to be ran before rendering a page or layouts. So we probably won't be using middleware for this app, but if you're familiar with middleware in a server-side language, say Node or Laravel, then it's pretty similar. And the next folder is pages. And these are where your pages or your routes live. They are still Vue single file components and will transform any file inside this folder to a route for your application. So let me show you what I mean. So index is the main page when we open our app. So to make a new route, all we have to do is add another page in here, say about. Let's add a template in here, about, actually it's div about page here. And that will automatically register a route for you. If you go here, go to /about, that should show up. And there it is. That's how easy it is to create routes. Not that it was difficult to do in a normal Vue app, but this just makes it as easy as possible. You can also use folders here. So if I were to create a folder called about, and within that, let's put this one in there, move it, and then let's rename it to index. This will work the same way. And we'll take this approach because we need to use this for route parameters later on. And I think it's cleaner that way. Okay, so I had to restart my Nuxt server for that about page to start working again. Okay, let's set up the skeleton for our app. We won't focus on styling in this video. We'll just get everything in place and then style it in the next video. So let's start by adding a navigation component to the default layout. So if we go here to layouts, let's just add a navigation in here. So let's make a new component first, actually. So let's call it navigation.view. Let's just do template. Let's make a div. And let's just make some anchor tags in here. So let's just say home, home, and about. And let's import this in our application, in our default layout here. So I'm going to make a script tag, and I'm going to import navigation from at components navigation, And then let's add that here in the components key. Component. And let's just say navigation. Okay. And let's use it up here. Okay, see if this renders. So there we go. Home has the menu, and so does about. So how do we get these anchor links to go to that specific route? In normal Vue, you would use router link, but for Nuxt, you would use Nuxt link. So Nuxt link. So you say to, and then you tell it where you want to go. So the first one is just home, and then we can close it. And then the next one is about, /about, and about. Okay, let's see if this works. So now we're on the about page, and there's the home page. Cool. And you can see the route changing there. Awesome. Okay, so now for the main page, I want to fetch all the popular video games from the video game API. So let's go into the documentation. So this is the API I found, and it's actually pretty extensive and has a lot of options. So let's look at a basic example. It's free to use for a certain amount of requests. And here's an example using Axios. But I'm going to use my REST client, which is Insomnia, and we'll just see how this works. So let's just grab a basic example. So this is the endpoint here. And yeah, let's just grab this and go into our, make this bigger for you guys. Let's make it full screen. Okay, so let's make a new request. It's going to be a GET request. Let's call it IGDB get games. Let's create that. And then that is the route or the URL, but we need to authenticate. And we have to send in our API key here. We also have to send in application JSON. So let's go ahead and do that. Accept application JSON. And we have to set the user dash key. So let's do that. And my API key is here. And let's put that in there. And with any luck, this should work. And there we go. We get a list of games and all their associated information. So let's go back to the examples page. And let's grab the one. There's one here for popular right here. So let's do this instead. And as you can see, it's very extensive where you can specify the fields and you can sort. You can do a whole bunch of other things, which we'll explore as we go along. But let's just change this to the popular. And these are the popular games that we're getting. And I think by default it shows 10. You can change that, but I'm good with 10. We'll just show 10 on the index page. Okay, so if you look at my design here, what do we have on the index page? We just have 3 pieces of information we need for each game. We need obviously the title, we need the genre, and we need the cover. So what do we have here in the response? We have the title, that's good. And we don't need this. So we need the cover and we need the genre. So let's go into the docs, check out the endpoints, and game is the one we're interested in. And here's all the fields you can specify. So let's start with the genre. There's a field here called genre, so we can add that to our request. So if we just add genre here, we can get that field back, add a comma. I think it's plural, genres. Okay, so now we're getting this genre, but it's only the ID, and we want the actual name of the genre. So we kind of want to do a join on this genres table. So how do we do that? So if we go back to the documentation, if you go to reference, and if you go to expander, this is what we need to do. It says we can combine multiple requests. So to do that, we just have to give it the field name we're looking for. So in our case, we want genres.name. And then we have to add on this expand option. Let's go ahead and do that. Put it at the end here. Let's put genres in here. And let's see if that works. Okay, so now we have this name, and we can use that to display the information we need. Now, be careful with, if you're using this, expanders, because I believe for the free tier, you only have 100, and you can, I actually went over that. So just be careful when you're using this. And what's the other field we need? We need the, let's go back to our endpoints here. We need the cover. I believe it's called cover. Let's go back to game and let's look for cover here. Yeah, so we need the cover. So let's go ahead and grab the cover. Let's put it here, cover. Okay, so we get a URL back along with some other information. So let's see if this gives us what we want. So let's go into here. Let's just paste that in. Just go HTTPS. Okay, so that's the cover, but it's kind of small. So how do we get a larger image here? Again, go back into here, reference, images. And here are the different sizes. And we just have to change the URL to get the size we want. So I want this size, cover big. So all I have to do is change the URL to t_cover_big, and we get a bigger image. So that's what we'll do. Okay, so now that we have our API call set up, let's make a request from inside our app with Axios. So in our index, this is where we wanted to make an Ajax request. Traditionally, you would do something like add a created hook and then make an Axios call in here. And then we'll have some data which returns an object and say we have some information about games, and that's an empty array. And then as the Axios call resolves, we'll just set games to like response.data or something. And you can totally do that still, but I'd like to illustrate how to use async data from within Nuxt. So if we go into the docs and go to async data. So async data is similar to data here, but all of this happens on the server. So if you want any data to be rendered on the server, then you would use async data. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to grab this. Sorry, just this. And I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to leave the normal data in here. So let me just put async data underneath. Actually, let's put it on top. And after this resolves, then it will be joined with the normal data. So let's go ahead and grab our endpoint from our REST client. Let's copy this. And let's paste it in here. And this is what happens when it's successful. So this is the data that's going to be merged with our data down here once it resolves. So I want a property called games, and that's just going to be whatever is returned from this, which should be an array. And when there's an error, I just want to console log it. That's fine. And I believe I need to import Axios here. So let me just import Axios from Axios. And I also need to make sure that I'm sending over the user key here. So there are a few ways to do this, but I'm going to do it in the layout because we're going to be doing this for all of our Axios calls. So in the layout, I'm just going to import Axios here as well and set the defaults here. So I'm just going to paste it in, and it's just setting the user key header for every Axios request we make. So there's my key, and yeah, it's going to attach that. So let me save that. Let me save this, and let's see what we get. So right here. Okay, let's remove that created hook. I don't need that. Okay. Okay, let's see what we're getting here. Are we getting that games property? And we are. Cool. And there's the games. That we're interested in. Okay, so now let's render out the games in this index page. So let's go back into here, and I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff here. So the section, don't need that. Let's just add a container here. And then let's make a game container. And here is where I want to render the game. So I'm going to loop over them using v4. So v4 game in games. And the key is going to be game.id. So if you go into here, each game has an ID, which is unique. So we can use that for the key. And we want the image. So let's make an image tag here. The source is going to be game.cover.url, and we have to bind that. And alt say cover. And then we want the game name. And we also want the game genre. Let's see what, so the genre is an array. We'll just go with the first one. So it's genres first dot name. So genres first dot name. And let's see if this renders out the games. And there we go. So there's all the games. Cool. We can add some margin bottom on this. Let's add a class on this. Again, we'll style this in the next video, but I just want to dump everything onto the page. Okay, so yeah, like I said, for the image, this is too small. So how are we going to get a larger image? Like I showed here, we just have to replace this part. I think by default it's t_thumbnail or t_thumb. And then we want to replace that with t_cover big. So we can use some JavaScript in here. So right here, we'll just do replace t_thumb with t_cover cover big, and see if I did that right. Back here, and there you go, there's a larger image. So this actually has to be a link because this is supposed to link to the details page. So let's go ahead and change this to a link. Actually, not a link, it should be a Nuxt link. And we have to add 2. And where do we want it to go? So we want it to go to a /games. Actually, it should be like this, /games / and we want ideally we'd want a slug, but in the API you can't search for slug, you have to use the ID. So we'll just use the ID, game.id. And that should link to that route, which we'll make in a second. So if you look to the bottom left, you'll see that the ID is appending. Cool. What happened to the margin bottom? I think we have to make it display block, which I think it's just block. Yeah, cool. Okay, cool. All right, so we have this rendering out in our page. So now we want that games route. So obviously it can't be found because we didn't define it. So let's go ahead and make a new folder for games. So games. And we don't need an index because there's no route that goes specifically to just /games. But we need a route a dynamic route. A route parameter, sorry, that grabs the ID here so we can make use of it in the page component. So to do that, we have to make a new single file component and prepend it with the underscore. So in our case, it's _id.view. And let's add a template in here and game detail page. So now this should work. Let's go back and let's do a hard refresh. So there you go. And I'll show you how to grab this ID because we're going to be using this to make another Ajax call to the API. Okay, so let's grab I'm going to grab the ID here and we'll go back into our REST clients so we can see how to craft our API endpoint. So back into here, let's duplicate this one. And let's call this IGDB get game singular. Moves up. Okay, so here we can just add the ID and then we can specify the fields. So let's just not specify the fields for now and see what we get. Okay, so we get some information here. We get the name, the summary, and a bunch of other information. So let's go into our design and see what information we need. And let's just dump everything on the page. And then, like I said, we'll style it in the next video. So we need the name, the publisher, the cover, the platforms, the release date. So let's go through this one by one. Let's go back into our REST client. And then I'm going to put that fields back. And let's just specify exactly what we want. So I'm going to erase all of this. And we're going to need that expand in a second. Let's just cut that out. Okay, so right now it's just a name. Cool. What's the next thing? We need the publisher. So let's grab, I think it's called publishers. And again, it comes back as an ID. So we need to do publishers.name and then do the expand thing and publishers. And there's the name. Cool. Next, we need the cover. So we did that already before. So it's just cover. And we can do that replace trick. Cool. And we need the summary. there's the summary. Cool. We need the platforms. So that's another expander. So if we just do platforms here, it's going to give us an array of platforms. But again, they are IDs and they want the actual name. So we'll do platforms.name and we'll expand the platforms as well. There you go. There's a whole bunch of platforms and there's even a summary of the platform, which we don't need, but we'll just leave it. What else? We need the release date. I believe it's called first release date. And it comes back as a Unix timestamp, but we can easily convert this into a human readable date. We need the website, and the field is called websites. It has a whole bunch of them. As you can see, it's an array, and it has different websites, like the official website, the Twitter page. But the official website is the one with category 1. So we'll filter that down when we're rendering it on the page. What else do we want? We want the ratings. So there's a field called total rating. And yeah, we'll just display this as well. And we want the screenshots, which is similar to the cover, but it's going to come back as an array because there's more than one. So screenshots, and there you go. Cool. So that is all the information we need. So let's go ahead and make that Ajax call from within here. So let me just make a script here, and let me import Axios. And let me just paste this in here, which is the endpoint. Just comment this out. And let's go back to our index page and just grab this async data. And let's paste that in. Okay, so this is the endpoint now. And let's paste that in. And instead of games, we just want one game because it's only information for one game. And yeah, we have to get this ID from the route parameter. So this. So let's go ahead and just replace this with this variable. And it's just going to be params.id. And that should do it. Let's see if we're getting back some data. So let me just open up DevTools here and let me refresh the page. All right, let's open Vue, let's drill down and find it. Okay, so we do get it. And yeah, this is the right game. But notice how it's coming in as an array. We just want the object. So we can just do this. We can just set it to the first one here. The reason it's an array is because you can actually have multiple IDs in here, like another ID, and then it will have an array of 2 games or however many you specify. Okay, so let's just dump all this information on the page. So back to our code. And let's just dump everything in here. I'm just gonna start with the game name, see if that works. Okay, Destiny 2, cool. Let's put in the center actually. Container MX Auto. Let's dump out the publisher. So game publishers 0. And there it is, but that's an object. So let's go .name. Cool. Now let's grab the cover. So I'm going to do the same thing I did here. So I'm just going to grab this and paste that in. And then that's going to be, yeah, that's right. It should be right. T-thumb. Okay. See if that works. Okay. Let's put the summary in a p tag, game.summary. Not sure why it's doing that. It's just a refresh and it goes away. And I'm just going to do the rest of the fields. It's pretty much the same. Just if you're not sure, just look into the data you're getting back, and this is everything you need. So yeah, I'll fast forward to when it's done. Okay, so there's all the information we need. And again, I said this like 4 times already, but we'll style it like this in the next video. Okay, so I want to show you a few more things within Nuxt. The first one is, so there's a config file here, and there's a progress bar that shows. And if you change the color of this, right now it's white, so that's why we didn't see it. Let's change it to a nice green color, so 4FC08D, okay. And now I think you might have to restart the Nuxt server. Let's see. Yeah, there's no progress bar yet, so let me restart the Nuxt server. Okay, so let's see if this works now. Refresh. Okay, so you see that green bar on top? And if you go here, you'll see a progress bar. Yeah, we're getting, why is this? Okay, the reason I'm getting this error is because I'm getting CORS errors, which makes sense because the free tier of this API doesn't allow CORS. And I think it's allowing CORS for some requests, but it's not allowing it for other requests. So here's a way to get around this CORS issue. If this were a real app, I'd obviously just set it to allow CORS, and you can do that from within the API. But for testing purposes, we can set up a proxy, and you can use this CORS anywhere proxy and just prepend it to the URL you're looking at for the API. So let me show you what I mean. If we just append this to here, then that should serve as a proxy, and we no longer get that CORS issue. I think we have to add another header. Yeah, we do. So we have to add X requested with. So I'm going to add that here. Requested with. And I'm going to set that to XML HTTP request. And now that should work. Okay, so let's do this in our code. So I'm going to go back to our code. I'm going to add this header in our code. And that should be in default right here. So I'm going to add an additional header, X requested with. And then for our 2 Ajax calls, let's just make a proxy URL. So for this case, I'm just going to do it here. And let's just line that up. And then we can just prepend it here. So we'll just do this. Proxy URL. And let's do the same thing for the other request. So right here, let's do that. And let's grab this and do the same thing. And now this should get rid of those CORS errors that we're getting. So back to here, let's go back to our app, and this should go away. So let's go back to the main page. Cool, no more CORS errors. Let's click on this. Oh, there it is, cool. So yeah, my CSS is acting weird, but it's there. Home. You see the progress bar, which was what I was trying to illustrate before I saw these CORS issues. And yeah, cool. Okay, what else do I want to show you? Okay, let's look at the title of the page. So you might want to change the title depending on what route you're on. You can set a global one in the config. So in the Nuxt config, right here, you can just set it right here. Right now it's set to package name. Let's set that to video games. Might have to restart the app or the Nuxt server. Yeah, you probably do. Let's restart it. Okay, let's test this out again. Okay, so there's the title. And if you want to set the title for a specific route, you can add a custom head method in that specific page. So for this case, right here, so let's just add another method called head, and it's return object, and title goes here. So we want this.game.name, and it's just append video games. See if this works. So there you go. You see that change there. Cool. Okay, one more thing. Page transitions. So let's look for that. So this works similarly to the transition component in Vue, but let's do a very basic page transition where it just fades in and out as you go to a different route. And there's more examples here on the examples page. I think there is a code sandbox for route transitions. So just take a look at that. There's a video here too. So here's an example of different types of page transitions. So there's one. There's one. So yeah, just take a look at this example. There's code here. We'll just do a very basic one. So for this, you need to specify the transitions within a CSS file. So I'm just going to grab this. And the default transition name is page. So you can have different transitions for different animations you want, but we'll just stick with this one. So let's use we already have a Tailwind CSS. So I'll just put it in here. So I'll put it right here. Okay. And then we just have to include that CSS in our Nuxt config. And I think it's already added because it's adding Tailwind in our Nuxt config. And it is right there. So I think that's it. Let's see if this works. It's hard refresh. So there's the transition. Cool. Okay, so I think I know why it's displaying this way. I think it's clashing with the default container styles here, which is provided by the Nuxt, provided by Nuxt when you install it. So I'm going to remove this. Actually, we can remove all of this because we're using Tailwind anyways. And again, we're going to style it in the next video. So let's just see if this always renders correctly now. So home, it does. About, sorry, not about. Super seducer. Okay, so now it renders correctly. Cool. So there you have it, guys. We've taken a look at the basics of Nuxt.js and built out this video game app that pulls from the IGDB video game API. As you can see, Nuxt not only adds server-side rendering, but a bunch of conveniences that make development with Vue even easier. If I were to build a medium to large size Vue app, I would definitely reach for Nuxt.js. So stay tuned for the next one, as I will use Tailwind CSS to style it as I have in my design here. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.